Most people believe respect is earned by being liked. This belief is not innocent. It is the first weakness. If you pay attention, not to what people say, but to how they behave when power is present, you will notice something unsettling. The individuals who are liked are rarely obeyed. They are tolerated, used, slowly ignored, and eventually discarded the moment their usefulness expires. The lie begins early. Approval is sold as safety. Acceptance is framed as protection. You are taught subtly that harmony keeps you alive. That conflict is dangerous. That friction invites punishment. So you adapt, you soften, you learn to smile at discomfort and call it maturity. Machiavelli understood this pattern long before it was dressed up as morality. He saw that human beings do not organize themselves around virtue. They organize themselves around advantage, and advantage does not respect kindness. It respects leverage. The need to be liked is not a social trait. It is a survival strategy formed in weakness. When someone wants to be liked, they are broadcasting a silent message. I need something from you: approval, safety, belonging, permission, to exist without resistance. This message is always heard, even when it is never spoken. And once it is heard, the dynamic is set. People do not respect those who need them. They study them, they test them. They push gently at first, then harder, observing how much pressure the person can tolerate before folding. The moment someone prioritizes being liked, they surrender the upper ground. From that point forward, every interaction becomes a negotiation, where they are always the one conceding first. This is not cruelty. It is human behavior. Machiavelli never asked whether people should behave differently. He observed that they would not. Power does not announce itself loudly. It does not beg. It does not explain. It creates an atmosphere where explanation is unnecessary. The respected individual does not chase approval because approval has no strategic value to them. They are not trying to be embraced. They are positioning themselves to be unavoidable. Respect begins where likability ends. The transition is uncomfortable because it forces you to abandon a fantasy that being good will protect you, that being agreeable will spare you conflict, that being understood will prevent betrayal. None of these beliefs survive contact with reality. People betray weakness, not strength. They resent dependency, not independence. They exploit openness, not mystery. When you seek to be liked, you invite evaluation. You place yourself on trial in the minds of others. Every gesture becomes something they can accept or reject. You give them the authority to define your value. That authority is rarely returned. Respect works in the opposite direction. It is not granted through warmth. It is imposed through consistency, boundaries, and the quiet implication of consequence. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. This statement is often misunderstood. Fear in this context is not terror. It is not violence. It is not hostility. It is the awareness that crossing you carries a cost. The liked individual removes cost. The respected individual introduces it without announcing it. Watch how people behave around those they truly respect. They speak more carefully. They hesitate before interrupting. They self-correct. They feel watched, even when no eyes are on them. Respect creates internal discipline in others. Likability creates entitlement. When someone knows you want their approval, they feel superior to you. When someone knows you do not need them, they become cautious. This is the quiet reversal. Human beings are drawn toward power the way insects are drawn to light. Not because it is kind, but because it is orienting. Power clarifies hierarchy. It removes ambiguity. It tells people where they stand without words. Most people fear hierarchy, yet unconsciously crave it. They want to know who leads, who follows, who decides, and who absorbs the consequences. When no one claims authority, chaos emerges. And in chaos, the most ruthless eventually take control. Respect is not demanded. It is engineered. It begins with emotional self-control. The inability to regulate emotion is read as unpredictability or neediness. Both are weaknesses. The respected individual does not react quickly. They do not explain themselves when challenged. Silence becomes their first instrument of pressure. Silence unsettles people who are accustomed to being validated. When you do not rush to fill space, others reveal themselves. They overtalk. They justify. They seek reassurance. Every unnecessary word they speak is information. Every moment of discomfort they expose tells you exactly where they are fragile. The liked person fills silence to ease tension. The respected person lets tension work for them. Machiavelli observed that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see but few can feel. Appearances shape belief long before truth has a chance to intervene. This is why restraint projects power. It signals that you are not governed by impulse, that you are not desperate for alignment, that your approval is scarce. Scarcity creates value even in human relationships. Those who are always available are unconsciously ranked lower. Those who withdraw strategically become objects of curiosity. Curiosity leads to attention. Attention leads to influence. Respect grows in environments where access is limited. This does not require cruelty. It requires selectivity. The desire to be liked pushes people to overexpose themselves. They share too much, explain too often, apologize reflexively. Each apology chips away at perceived authority. Each explanation suggests insecurity. Each confession becomes leverage in the wrong hands. Machiavellian realism does not encourage dishonesty for pleasure. It encourages discretion for survival. People weaponize information, not immediately, not obviously, but inevitably. The respected individual understands that transparency is not virtue, it is vulnerability. They reveal only what strengthens their position. Everything else remains private, not hidden out of fear, but guarded out of intelligence. Respect is maintained through predictability of principle, not predictability of behavior. People should know what you stand for, but never be entirely sure how you will respond when crossed. This ambiguity discourages testing. The liked person is tested constantly. The respected person is approached carefully. There is a moment when people realize you will not chase them. That moment changes everything. Conversations shift. Power recalibrates. The same people who once ignored your boundaries begin to negotiate, not because you demanded it, but because you no longer need them. Need repels respect. Detachment attracts it. This detachment is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional economy. You spend nothing unnecessarily. You do not react to every slight. You do not correct every misunderstanding. You allow misinterpretation to exist when correcting it would weaken your position. Machiavelli knew that appearing virtuous is often more useful than being virtuous. In modern terms, this means controlling perception without surrendering control. You let others believe what benefits you. You do not rush to dismantle illusions that protect your leverage. The urge to be liked drives people to defend their image constantly. The respected individual allows ambiguity to do the work. People respect what they cannot easily predict or manipulate. Power dynamics are not negotiated verbally. They are felt. A shift in posture, a delayed response, an unanswered message, a calm refusal. These are not dramatic acts. They are subtle recalibrations. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the world begins to explain itself to you. You notice who withdraws when they cannot control you. You notice who becomes hostile when you stop accommodating them. You notice who suddenly shows respect when your compliance disappears. These reactions reveal true intentions more accurately than words ever could. Machiavellian psychology is not about domination for pleasure. It is about clarity in a world where intentions are rarely pure. People act in self-interest, even when they speak the language of morality. They protect themselves first, rationalize later, and call it principle. Respect acknowledges this reality without resentment. You do not need to hate people to see them clearly. When you stop being liked, you do not become isolated. You become filtered. The weak drift away. The manipulative lose interest. The opportunistic seek easier targets. What remains are those who calculate carefully before engaging you. This is not loneliness. It is selection. The respected individual understands that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of control. Control over reaction, control over access, control over self. Those who seek to be liked outsource control to others. Those who seek respect reclaim it internally. The final illusion is believing that respect must be requested. It cannot be. The moment you ask for respect, you confirm its absence. Respect emerges when your presence alters behavior without instruction, when people lower their voice around you, when they pause before disagreeing, when they seek your reaction before making decisions. These are not accidents. They are responses to something you have cultivated quietly. Machiavelli did not promise goodness. He promised effectiveness. And effectiveness is cold because reality is indifferent to your intentions. In the end, the most dangerous realization is not that people can be cruel. It is that they are consistent. They follow power. They test weakness. They respect those who do not need them. And the moment you stop needing to be liked, you begin to understand why respect has always felt distant. It was never withheld. It was waiting for you to become someone who no longer asked for it. Respect does not arrive loudly. It settles in slowly. Like a temperature change no one notices until movement becomes uncomfortable. When you stop trying to be liked, the first reaction you encounter is confusion. People are accustomed to a certain rhythm from you, a responsiveness, a willingness to explain, a predictable softness. When that rhythm disappears, they search for the old signals. They repeat behaviors that once worked, jokes that used to land, pressure that once bent you, emotional cues designed to pull you back into compliance. You do not respond. This silence is not empty. It is weighted. It forces recalibration. People begin to wonder whether something has shifted internally, or whether they misjudged you all along. Both possibilities unsettle them. Humans are deeply uncomfortable when their mental model of someone collapses. The liked individual reinforces others' expectations. The respected individual breaks them. At this stage, some people will test boundaries more aggressively. This is not personal. It is diagnostic. They need to know whether the change is temporary or structural, whether resistance will trigger guilt, anger, or retreat. They are mapping consequences. This is where most people fail. They mistake testing for hostility and rush to smooth the interaction. They explain. They justify. They reassure. In doing so, they restore the old hierarchy. The respected individual does nothing dramatic. They do not escalate. They simply remain unmoved. Machiavelli understood that consistency under pressure is interpreted as power, not morality, not kindness, power, because power suggests insulation. It suggests that external forces cannot easily disturb internal order. People do not fear strength itself. They fear the uncertainty of what strength might do if crossed. This is why emotional restraint is so unsettling. When someone reacts strongly, you know where you stand. When someone reacts calmly, you do not. Calmness deprives others of feedback. Without feedback, they lose control. Control is what people seek, even when they pretend otherwise. The need to be liked is an attempt to control how others feel about you. Respect emerges when you stop managing their emotions and begin managing your position. Position is everything. Position determines who speaks first, who interrupts, who waits, who adapts, who absorbs inconvenience, who is forgiven, who is replaced. People rarely articulate these dynamics, but they obey them instinctively. Children understand them before they understand language. Adults pretend they don't exist because acknowledging them threatens their self-image. Machiavelli did not flinch from this reality. He observed it without moralizing, because moralizing clouds judgment. Once judgment is clouded, manipulation becomes easy. The world does not reward honesty, it rewards accuracy. Accuracy requires seeing people as they are, not as they present themselves. Not as they wish to be seen, but as they behave when incentives shift. Watch how someone treats you when you stop being useful. Watch how quickly warmth evaporates when compliance disappears. These moments are not betrayals. They are disclosures. The respected individual collects these disclosures quietly. They do not confront every inconsistency. Confrontation exposes intention prematurely. It invites resistance. Observation, on the other hand, builds leverage. Leverage is not force. It is the ability to remain still while others adjust around you. This is why respect grows around those who appear self-contained. People sense when someone's stability does not depend on external validation. That independence triggers a subtle reversal. Instead of you seeking alignment, others begin seeking yours. They become careful Carefulness is respect's earliest form. The liked individual inspires comfort. Comfort dissolves hierarchy. In comfort, people relax their boundaries. They speak casually. They overstep. They assume forgiveness. Respect introduces mild tension, not fear but alertness. People monitor themselves. They consider consequences. They slow down. Slowness is a signal of power. Those with power do not rush. They are not chased by urgency. They are not pulled by emotional gravity. Their time feels heavier than others' time. When they speak, it carries weight because it is scarce. Scarcity creates value, not because it is artificial, but because it implies choice. If you are always available, it suggests you have nowhere else to be. If you always explain yourself, it suggests you are unsure of your footing. If you constantly seek harmony, it suggests you fear disruption. Fear is sensed instantly. People may not consciously identify it, but their behavior adjusts around it. They probe, they exploit, they push. The moment you stop fearing disruption, disruption stops fearing you. This is not achieved through aggression. Aggression is reactive. It reveals insecurity. The calm refusal to engage reveals certainty. Machiavelli warned that excessive mercy leads to disorder. Not because mercy is evil, but because disorder invites predators. When boundaries are soft, the most ruthless fill the vacuum. Respect is preventative. It discourages predation before it begins. When people believe crossing you will result in silence rather than drama, withdrawal rather than pleading, distance rather than explanation, they hesitate. Hesitation is often enough. The respected individual does not need to win every exchange. They are playing a longer game. They allow small losses to preserve structural dominance. They understand that short-term discomfort often produces long-term compliance. Those who seek to be liked cannot tolerate temporary disapproval. They trade position for relief. Over time, this erodes their authority completely. Authority does not come from force. It comes from the perception that you are not easily moved. This perception extends beyond conversation. It enters posture, pacing, eye contact, decision-making. You do not rush decisions to please others. You do not soften conclusions to avoid friction. You state what is necessary, then stop. Stopping is powerful. Most people talk past the point of strength. They dilute their statements with qualifiers, apologies, and reassurance. They think clarity requires elaboration. It does not. Clarity requires finality. Finality intimidates those who rely on negotiation. The more you explain, the more you invite debate. The more you debate, the more you signal uncertainty. Uncertainty invites challenge. The respected individual understands when silence is the strongest reply. Silence forces others to fill the gap. And when they do, they reveal their assumptions, fears, and intentions. This information is invaluable. Information asymmetry is one of the oldest forms of power. Machiavelli wrote for rulers, but his insights apply anywhere hierarchy exists, which is everywhere: families, workplaces, social groups, even friendships, especially friendships. Friendship is often where the desire to be liked causes the most damage. Boundaries blur. Expectations grow unspoken. Resentments accumulate silently. The liked friend becomes the emotional dumping ground. The respected friend becomes the anchor. People lean on anchors. They stand on dumping grounds. Respect allows distance without abandonment. It permits separation without hostility. It creates relationships that are chosen, not clung to. Clinging repels. Choice attracts. When you stop chasing closeness, closeness recalibrates itself. People approach more carefully. They ask rather than assume. They listen more closely. Listening is not politeness. It is recognition of hierarchy. Those above listen selectively. Those below listen attentively. The shift is subtle but unmistakable once you feel it. Machiavellian realism is not about turning cold. It is about becoming exact. Exact with your time. Exact with your words. Exact with your energy. Energy is finite. Where you spend it reveals your priorities. When you stop spending it on approval, you begin accumulating it as presence. Presence cannot be faked. It is felt before it is understood. People sense when someone is internally aligned, when actions do not contradict values, when responses are measured rather than impulsive. This coherence is rare. Rarity attracts attention. Attention, when unmanaged, leads back to the need to be liked. Attention, when controlled, becomes influence. Influence is not persuasion. It is gravity. People orbit what feels stable. The final transition is quiet. One day you notice people speaking differently around you, asking instead of assuming, waiting instead of interrupting, adjusting without being told. Nothing dramatic happened, no confrontation, no declaration, just a consistent refusal to perform for acceptance. You did not become cruel. You became opaque. Opacity protects. When others cannot read you easily, they treat you carefully. When they treat you carefully, respect is already formed. Machiavelli would remind you that appearances matter because perception guides action, but he would also remind you that substance sustains appearances. Empty posturing collapses under pressure. True restraint does not. The world does not punish you for being cold. It punishes you for being weak. Weakness is not kindness. Weakness is dependence disguised as virtue. The moment you stop needing to be liked, you remove a handle others used to move you. And without that handle, manipulation becomes inefficient. People move on. What remains is not admiration, affection, or warmth. What remains is distance, caution, and recognition, respect. And once you understand this, you cannot unsee it. You will notice how often people trade dignity for approval, how often they explain themselves into smaller positions, how often they mistake emotional availability for strength. You will also notice how differently the world responds. When you stop participating in that exchange, nothing becomes easier. Everything becomes clearer. And clarity, once acquired, is irreversible. Clarity sharpens perception, and once perception sharpens, innocence dissolves. You begin to see patterns you once excused as coincidence. The way certain people only respect boundaries after they are enforced, never before. The way friendliness evaporates the moment resistance appears. The way moral language is deployed selectively only when it benefits the speaker. None of this is accidental. It is adaptive behavior. Most people are not malicious. They are opportunistic. This distinction matters because it explains why disappointment is so common and betrayal feels personal when it is not. People do not wake up planning to exploit you. They simply follow incentives. When incentives change, behavior follows. The desire to be liked creates incentives for others to push. The absence of that desire removes them. When you withdraw emotional availability, some will accuse you of changing. This accusation is revealing. It implies ownership. It suggests they were benefiting from your previous state. The moment you stop feeding that benefit, they feel loss and call it betrayal. Loss always disguises itself as moral outrage. The respected individual does not argue against these accusations. Argument grants legitimacy. They let the discomfort stand. Discomfort forces self-examination in those capable of it and withdrawal in those who are not. Both outcomes are useful. Power is not about dominating others. It is about structuring environments where domination is unnecessary, where behavior aligns with your interests without constant correction. This is achieved through predictability of consequence, not predictability of emotion. People must know that crossing you will change the dynamic permanently, not explosively, not dramatically, quietly, irreversibly. Irreversibility is what people fear most. They can tolerate anger because anger fades. They can tolerate arguments because arguments end. What unsettles them is distance that does not close, silence that does not explain, and access that does not return. The liked individual threatens consequences they never enforce. The respected individual enforces consequences they never threaten. Machiavelli understood that punishment delayed is often punishment denied, not because time weakens justice, but because hesitation signals doubt. Doubt invites challenge. This is why decisiveness feels authoritarian to those who rely on ambiguity. Ambiguity gives them room to maneuver. Decisiveness removes it. You do not need to be harsh. You need to be final. Finality alters how people categorize you. They stop seeing you as negotiable. Negotiability is where exploitation lives. Once people realize negotiation is limited, they adjust their strategy. Some become respectful, some disengage. Both outcomes reduce friction. Friction drains energy. Energy is better spent on positioning. Positioning is subtle. It is where you sit, when you speak, how long you wait before responding, whether you acknowledge provocation at all. These are not social tricks. They are signals of internal hierarchy. Those who rush to respond are signaling urgency. Those who delay signal autonomy. Autonomy commands respect because it implies options. People respect those who appear to have options because options reduce desperation. Desperation is visible long before it is admitted. This is why the calmest person in the room often controls the room without effort. Others unconsciously synchronize to their pace. The nervous speed of weaker personalities orbits the stillness of the composed. Stillness is dominance without motion. Machiavelli warned against appearing weak, not because weakness invites cruelty, but because it invites correction. People feel entitled to correct what they perceive as weak. They interrupt it, advise it, override it, improve it. Respect stops unsolicited correction. When people stop correcting you, they begin consulting you. Consultation is acknowledgement of authority. Authority is granted when resistance proves costly and alignment proves efficient. The respected individual does not overinvest emotionally in outcomes. Emotional overinvestment creates pressure. Pressure leaks through tone, posture, and language. Others feel it and instinctively push back. Detachment removes pressure. When you do not need agreement, disagreement loses its power. When disagreement loses power, people use it less. This is the paradox. The less you seek control, the more control emerges. Because you are no longer trying to force outcomes, others stop resisting. Resistance requires opposition. You become difficult to oppose because you are no longer pushing. This frustrates manipulative personalities most. They rely on reaction. Without reaction, their tactics lose shape. They escalate briefly, then retreat. Escalation is a confession. It reveals dependency. The respected individual lets others confess without interruption. You will notice that once respect is established, fewer words are required. Conversations shorten. Explanations disappear. Requests become direct. Disagreements become restrained. This efficiency is not warmth. It is recognition. Recognition that you are not easily swayed. Recognition that effort must be measured around you. Recognition that your boundaries are real. Boundaries are only respected when they are enforced without emotion. Emotion blurs boundaries. Calm reinforces them. Machiavelli wrote that men offend either out of fear or hatred. But most offense today is neither. It is convenience. People offend where they believe forgiveness is guaranteed. Remove guaranteed forgiveness, and offense declines. Not because people become better, but because behavior adapts. This is the core of Machiavellian realism. Morality is unreliable as a regulator. Structure is not. You do not need to appeal to conscience. You need to create conditions where certain behaviors no longer make sense. Respect is one of those conditions. It does not make people good. It makes them careful. Carefulness is enough. The final stage is internal. You stop monitoring how you are perceived. Monitoring perception drains attention inward. Attention inward weakens presence outward. Presence requires outward focus. When you stop managing impressions, impressions stabilize on their own. You become legible in a different way. Not emotionally transparent, but structurally consistent. Consistency builds reputation. Reputation travels faster than explanation. People will begin to adjust before interacting with you. They will hear stories, notice patterns, observe outcomes. By the time they meet you, expectations are already formed. This is power that operates in absence. Machiavelli understood that the most secure power is the power that does not need to be exercised. When you reach this point, the desire to be liked feels foreign, almost childish. You see it for what it is, a bargaining chip offered by those who have little else to trade. You no longer bargain, you choose. Choice is the final marker. Those who can choose are respected by those who cannot. This does not make you superior. It makes you independent. And independence, in a world built on dependency, will always feel threatening. That threat is not violence. It is possibility. The possibility that you will not bend. The possibility that you will not explain. The possibility that you will walk away without drama. Once people sense this possibility, they behave differently. They already know what comes next if they don't. And that knowledge, unspoken, unconfirmed, quietly held, is the dark power of respect. Most people will hear this and feel resistance. Not because it is wrong, but because it threatens something they rely on. The need to be liked is comforting. It gives structure to weakness. It offers a story where submission feels like virtue and fear feels like kindness. Letting go of that story creates emptiness. First, silence, distance, a sense of standing alone. Without approval as insulation. That moment is where most people retreat. Not everyone is meant to cross it. Respect is not built for the many. It is built for those who can tolerate being misunderstood without correcting it, being disliked without defending themselves, and being alone without negotiating their worth. Nothing here promises happiness. Nothing here offers validation. It only offers accuracy. Once you see these dynamics clearly, you will notice how often people expose themselves without realizing it. How often power is handed away in exchange for comfort. How rarely strength announces itself, and how reliably it is felt. From this point forward, you will either forget what you heard, or you will begin noticing changes in how people respond to you when you stop performing for them. That difference will tell you everything. This channel exists for those who notice, not for everyone. Not for those seeking reassurance, only for those who prefer clarity over comfort. If this perspective stayed with you longer than expected, you already know why you're here.